Hello again, and welcome this time to our backyard. A lot of times folks have asked us questions about where our locations are, and a lot of them have been at our house. Some we've taken out, but this one happens to be in the wooded area that's just in the backside of our house, and it is a lovely, beautiful, lovely area. It's really thick with trees, but it's just a real peaceful area. It's peaceful for us to kind of look out on this and see the peace that's behind us. Interesting fact about that is some of you may remember that a while back I had asked the congregation to send me pictures of peace to be used during our passing of the peace in our worship services. And so several of you started sending me pictures, and there were a few of sleeping children, and I had a few of some family members, but 95% at least of the pictures that I got were pictures of nature. There's something about nature that brings us peace. We go to the water, we go to the forest to find rest. We may find ourselves in a place where we really just need to breathe the fresh air, and so that's where we go to find peace. And it followed because that's what you all sent me when it came time to look at peace. So I've been thinking about this, being out in nature. And one of the things that I realize is if I were to mention creation care, or if I begin to talk about the environment, there's probably some of you that are going to want to turn off the video. In fact, maybe some of you just have. But the thing that really bothers me about that is this idea that creation care has, like so many other things in our world, been politicized. It has become a political statement to talk about the environment when it really should be a theological statement. I mean, to talk about taking care of our environment really is theological. And it's right there at the very beginning of Scripture. Some of you may remember that story of creation. There's actually two stories of creation that are given to us in Genesis, one right after the other. The first one comes to us from Genesis chapter 1. Let me just read this part. Now, God has just created all the other things of creation. And then the poemist, the poet, tells us this story of when humanity was created, beginning at verse 26. Then God said, "Let us make humankind in our own image, according to our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over all the cattle, and over all the wild animals of the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth." So God created humankind in his image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. God blessed them, and God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over every little thing, living thing that moves upon the earth." God said, "See, I have given you every plant yielding seed, which is upon the face of the earth, and every tree with seed and its fruit, and you shall have them for food. And to every beast of the earth, and to every bird of the air, and to everything that creeps on the earth, everything that has breath of life, I have given every green plant for food." And it was so. And it says, God saw everything that God had made, and indeed it was very good. And it was evening, and there was morning on the sixth day. Now, when you hear that story, you might hear words like dominion and subdue. And what often comes to our mind when we hear those words is domination and control. But what's interesting is that if you look deeper into this story, it's really not so much about domination and control as it is a story of stewardship. It's an invitation to be stewards of what God has given us. You see, in the creation story, the garden is still God's garden. But God has put humanity in that garden so that humankind might take care of it. In fact, it becomes even more clear when you look at the story as told in Genesis chapter 2. There, when God puts humankind into the garden, God puts them there to till and keep the garden. You see, there is the first responsibility that you and I are given as children of God is to take care of what God has created, to take care of this beautiful environment that brings us peace and brings us a sense of wholeness and brings us a sense of connecting with God in ways that perhaps for some of us we can't find any other way than to sit in the midst of nature. So why am I talking about this now? Why is this the subject now? Well, some of you may remember that when this whole pandemic thing started and we all shut down, remember? We all kind of shut down and no one was driving and we were all staying home and there's very, very limited time outside our homes or outside our given area. Well, you may remember some of the pictures that happened during that time. Pictures of India where the skies were clear for the first time that anybody could remember. I remember seeing a picture of the Los Angeles freeways and a picture of the hills outside of Los Angeles. You could actually see the hills. Some of you may remember that. It was almost as if when we paused, the environment, the creation was able to breathe again. So I talk about it for that reason, because it really did have an impact on me. Seeing how creation changed when we changed our behavior had an impact on me. I also had this impact when I realized that this is where I feel a sense of peace and closeness to God. And when you all send me pictures saying, "This is my peace," that had an impact on me. There's something about our need to take care of what God has given us that is well beyond anything that we might be looking at politically. It has to do with the first thing that God told us to do. Keep and till what you have given me. Now sure, God has given us these things to use, and that is true. And yet God has given us these things to use as we would care for anything that's important to us. Now, let me kind of come to a close by just saying, I recognize my own hypocrisy in the midst of all of this. You see, the truth is, one of the reasons I love this place that we live so much is I have really quick access to the freeway. I love the fact that when I'm trying to get somewhere, I can get right on the freeway. But you know what's funny is I hate the fact that when I go outside my home, I can hear the noise of the freeway. Yeah, it's hypocrisy. I also find myself sitting in this beauty and realizing how much this area means to me. And I find myself being kind of angry right now, I've got to admit to you, because right now, just on the other side of the housing row that we live on, they are beginning to tear down all the trees. In fact, I wanted to do this in that area, but I can't do it right now because there's a big bulldozer that's taking down the trees as we speak. And I find myself being really angry about that, and I think they shouldn't be doing that. And then I recognize that the people that live right below me, when my house was built, they felt the same way. Yep, it's hypocrisy. We know that we need to take care of what God has given us, but we also love the convenience of being able to use it at will. The question for us is, can we find a balance? Can we find a balance where we can do the very first thing that God told us to do and still find ways to enjoy all that God has given us without ruining it? Take some time, perhaps, today to Google images of nature right at the beginning of this pandemic. And ask yourself, God, how do I find a better balance so I can take care of all this wonderful stuff that you have given us? Allow me to till and keep the gift that you have given me in such a way that I can honor you. Thanks so much.